You and I have a bunch of things to talk about.
Okay.
First of all, I want to compliment you in another way, which is you have a stand-up special which has dropped literally 2 days ago, I think. Okay, now everyone's correcting me with 4. Oh, great, because we would have had a lot of calls. Why did you guys have to correct me on that?
Because you were looking at us like, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just say yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah,
Close
sure.
enough, idiot. That's all I need.
You were wrong.
It's just wrong with a soft
Don't
G.
do it here now.
It's not
Don't
wrong,
do it
guh.
here now. Don't do it
Okay.
in front of Gary, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't you mean Jerry?
Yeah. Born on Third Base
Yes.
is your stand-up special, and it's hilarious. Now,
thank
full
you.
disclosure, I'm such a fan that I had some involvement with my people in helping to bring this to reality. But I'm saying this as someone who hates himself.
How
So
can that be?
I'd be more than happy to shit on it if I could. It's really, really funny and
thank
beautifully
you.
done.
Thank you.
It's really nice, and so I'm congratulations.
Well, I had a lot of fun touring it, and the people liked it, and I shot it in Toronto, where they're just so nice and really love comedy, and so I'm,
Oh my
I'm
God, Canada,
very grateful.
Toronto.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's where that's where my ghost is going to go when it roams the earth, doing bits. It's going to go up to Toronto.
They have
Because
the
they're
best taste, and they're so nice.
They're really smart, and they laugh,
Yeah.
and they're fun.
Yeah.
And what's wrong? Why are you looking at me
No,
like that?
what a weird thing to say.
I don't wanna
that
go
your
up-
ghost is going to go to Toronto and you're just going to do bits?
Yeah, I don't want to go to heaven. Heaven
Okay,
sounds boring.
Okay. You're
I
just
don't
want
wanna
to
go
be stuck
up-
in this purgatory.
I don't want to go talk to Eleanor Roosevelt on a cloud. I want to go up to Toronto and do bits, and then go to a cool restaurant
But
afterwards.
wouldn't heaven, by definition, be a bunch of people who love your bits?
Yeah.
No, I don't like that.
Okay.
That seems patronizing. I wouldn't like that.
But you think, I'm sorry, just going back to this, you think you're going to go to Toronto, you're going to appear as a ghost, and people are just going to be like, let's see what bits he has.
Yes. What's the Gary, if you were in Toronto and you knew that I had passed away in the last year or two, and you heard that my ghost was in Toronto and he was doing bits somewhere, wouldn't you check him out?
I would check them out, and then I would also spend a lot of time seeing Rush. Yeah.
But no, in this scenario, they're dead too. But they're also playing.
No. This is my idea of heaven. Rush is touring, and Conan is doing stand-up associated with it.
Yeah.
And we're also spending time breaking down some of the licks, the guitar licks and things like that, and also the
I love it.
the
See?
drum solos.
This man gets me.
This
Okay.
is yeah.
Now
Now
it
listen,
makes sense.
Gary, you are a fellow Massachusetts masshole like
Peabody.
myself. You're from
Yes.
Peabody.
Yes.
And you talk about this a lot in your special, and you've touched on it before, but it really does inform a lot of your comedy, which is, I think, quite beautiful. But you grew up poor. You grew up. There's no other way to say it. You
we
grew
were
up poor.
Yeah, we were broke Jewish people, which people think, oh, that's a thing. But it really, most of us, especially in that time of in the 70s, a lot of people were broke. So yes, half the Jews would be broke too, right? Everybody was. Yeah. So and that informed me. It developed my personality in terms of my resentment towards certain kids growing up who had more than us, and it didn't have to be much. It could be an above ground pool, and I would be like, "Oh, look at the opulence! These people, they don't know what it is to struggle." And Christmas used to just blow me away. These kids would just get so much for Christmas,
Right.
and I would get a thing. 8 nights of a thing, but some of them were practical, which you don't want for holidays.
Like what? Well, give me an example of a practical Hanukkah gift.
I remember everybody says socks, but I would get pajamas, which I very rarely wore,
Right.
because it just that it was either freezing cold in my house, which required an electric blanket, which I can't even believe those things were legal at the time. They were just fire starters, but also
Oh, they all, and also
you could be
anytime-
electrocuted.
I just know this in Massachusetts. But every time a house burned down,
Yes.
in the 50s, 60s, or
Yeah.
70s, you'd see firemen walking away afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I'd hang out at these things, and they'd always, as a true arsonist does.
Yes.
But they'd always be like shaking their heads, going, and you'd always read in the paper that it was an electric blanket.
An electric blanket, or there would be a fire chief holding up a melted light bright.
Yes, yes.
And it would be, hopefully it would be the clown, because the clown face would melt into a frown.
Yeah.
Because he was upset by this as well. The clown,
sure,
not just the fire chief. But yeah, those were the two biggest fire causes.
Because what
I think,
could go
in the
wrong
70s.
if you took mid 20th century knowledge of electrical wiring and ran it through a bunch of cotton and nylon? Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah.
And then you go to sleep
driest
and
time
just
of
crank this thing.
Yeah.
So people would just burst into flames. Yeah. So you grow up in Peabody, and what's interesting is you said that it gave you a completely different perspective than a lot of kids have when you grew up not having. You grew up not having stuff. And so that you knew just by rote what things cost.
Oh, yes.
And you had that all down, which you said, when you don't have money, you know all of this stuff.
Yes. That's what always irritated me. I remember I had this neighbor who went to a summer camp. And I was interested in it because he came back with and this is a phenomenon of Jewish summer camps, where these kids who were kind of average athletics and attractiveness would go to summer camp, and they would walk taller when they returned, because they were they had culled all the Gentile kids from the group. So it was just the Jews were standing out, and the only choice the girls had or the boys had were other Jewish people. So that there was this thing, and they would be so confident, and because they had made out with a girl over the summer, where they weren't getting any makeout sessions in junior high or seventh grade or anything. And then they would come back in the fall, and they had more confidence. And I envied this. And I remember asking the kid, "Well, how much does this thing cost?" He says, "I don't know. Why would I know how much things cost?" And I said, "Oh, you would ask for something, and your parents would tell you no, we can't afford it, and then they would tell you how much everything costs."
So you knew how much everything.
Yeah. I remember I wanted this robot called 2XL, which was really just an 8-track player that they had somehow. It was a brilliant thing where it would ask you questions, and it was a trivia thing, and you got informed, and it was $54.87 in Toys R Us, where my mom worked at the mall, and she couldn't afford a babysitter, so I would, at 9 years old, walk around the mall for 3 hours while she worked, and then when the boss left, I could go in there and hang out at the stationery store. But I would walk around, hang around at Toys R Us, and at Sears you could play the Atari for a while, and then the Orange Julius kids would give me free Julii.
I love that you did the plural of Julius. That makes me so happy.
This sounds like heaven.
It was incredible.
Did you ever have fried octopi with your Julii?
So I was like the mall mascot, basically, and I would hang out at the Toys R Us, and there was this robot called 2XL, and I knew it was $54.87, and I would every year I would ask for it, and then but I also would ask people if I could borrow $54.87, which is so specific. But I hadn't worked out the fact that it would probably be 5% tax, and also, the parents would always say $55, but kids would always know that there was $54.87.
Sure.
That was a big kid thing. So I think...
Did you ever get it?
I did get it. My mom, there was a neighbor who got it and outgrew it several years later, and my mom bought it used from them and gave it to me for my birthday. And it worked 100%. Just the box was damaged because it had been opened.
I remember at Christmas as being perilous, meaning something great could happen, but also if you're one of 6,
wow,
you can get lost in the show. And Santa's busy because he's working at the microbiology lab, and sometimes Santa has a short fuse. And anyway, I remember once we had this tradition where we're asleep and Santa would put the gifts. They weren't wrapped, but they would just each one of the kids in the family has a piece of furniture in the living room. This is where my parents still live, mind you. Wow. In Brookline, Mass. And there's a different piece of furniture, and Luke's toys would go on a chair, and most people had a chair, and then mine just arbitrarily became there's this long white couch. Now think about it. Everything looks tiny and insignificant on a long white couch. And Santa's busy and there's a lot to do. So there were years where Santa's like, okay, I got Neil covered. I got Luke. I got Jane. I got Justin. And then he's down there and he's throwing stuff around. He's like, I got to get back to the lab. I think that germ got out. And then, I've been working on something called COVID. I hope it's.
Oh, shit.
But anyway, that was my dad. And anyway,
what's his name?
Thomas.
Oh, okay.
And so he would be. There was one Christmas where I think he was throwing everything around, and then he got to the giant white couch, and there was some socks, and there wasn't much. So I'll never forget that was the year he got a toboggan, like for everyone to share. But I come running downstairs, and I see this giant toboggan filling out the couch, and I'm like, I got a toboggan? This is insane. And I'll never forget my dad went, interesting. Santa told me on his way out that it's actually for everyone. And I went, huh? But it's like the one thing that's on my couch. And he went, Santa said you kind of get to be in charge of it, but it's for everyone. And I'm like, first of all, you're having a legal conversation with Santa about ownership. And then how are you in charge of a toboggan? I get to decide who sits where. But hey, I got over it. I'm 60 and bitching about it on a podcast.
That
really
tracks
your
with the
rosebud.
socialism of 1970s Massachusetts.
Oh my God.
Though.
And I still, to this day, when I go home and that white couch is still there.
Oh, really?
And I'll still look at it and I'll be like, fucking toboggan. There was a toboggan and then like some Post-its and some socks.
Oh,
my
no.
God.
And an electric blanket. And then, it's like, what kind of... Anyway, enough about me.
Man.
I'm just saying we all suffer.
I remember one year I did get a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons books.
And you talk about this.
Yeah.
You
I
talk
got
about
the
this in the
Dungeons
special. Yeah.
Hackett's books, but unfortunately it came with all these dice and the maps and everything like that, but it didn't come with any friends. And that is the greatest oversight of the TSR company was that, kids who are into this stuff
Right.
are lonely.